Welcome to PJ Does Life. I'm PJ, this is me doing life. I'm sorry I've been away for so long. I've been reading this book called The Ascent of Humanity by Charles Eisenstein. It's an amazing book and spells out exactly how we went from our happiness and tribal evolutionary origins to the point where we are now, abundant yet isolated. So while Jean Liedloff focused on child rearing, which you saw in the first video, Eisenstein goes to the very origins of civilization, separation. Since we first began planting seeds, we've seen the exponential growth of the main ideology of our culture, that man and nature are two separate things. I haven't finished this book yet, but I think it's extremely important. It might be the most important I've ever read, so I'm going to dedicate an entire video, or maybe even two, to it. For this video, though, I'm going to tell you about someone. So, as a teenager, he loved to paint watercolours. He dreamed one day of being an artist, and continued to paint into his adult years. As a child, he had trouble conforming to the school system, and had a fractious relationship, to say the least, with his father, who died when he was 14 years old. He was an only child, and his older siblings all died in infancy. He was a great lover of music, especially opera. He was a lover of animals, a vegetarian, and was highly devoted to his pet dog, who remained his lifelong companion. So, what kind of person am I painting here? Can you guess who it is? It's Adolf Hitler. Now, whenever we see a picture of Hitler, what's the tagline? The face of evil. Now, here we are with a cognitive disconnect emerging, because the kind of person I described doesn't match up to the singular label, pure evil. And I've chosen Hitler for this thought experiment precisely because he's such a divisive figure and so often associated with this label, pure evil. People would say that if there could be a person who is pure evil, then Hitler is it. But I've always had a trouble with this idea of evil and good people. So, let's take the infant Adolf and have him born not in the terrifying isolation of 20th century Western civilization, where separation anxiety, especially in the early 20th century, was built into our very upbringing. But instead, let's have him appear as a newborn with the Yaquana tribe, which were described in Jean Liedloff's book. So this baby Adolf, this version of him, has a close-knit extended family. Everything is done together, and he enjoys the alignment offered by the continuum demanded by his evolutionary expectations, and delivered to him by his community. He has security, which allows him to explore, and most importantly, he has a sense of self intricately woven into the fabric of his community. He's spiritually fulfilled, which is to say, evolutionary fulfilled. And I'll talk about what I mean in that comparison in another video, because I think it needs its own one. And in the most positive way, he knows his place, and I mean that positively. The context in which he's around makes sense. Now, 30 years later, let's take Adolf back to Germany and see if he feels the need to scourge the earth of the Jewish plague and establish the 1,000-year German Reich. I don't think so. In fact, I'd bet all my money that Hitler would end up being far more balanced, far more at peace with himself and the world than most people living in Western civilization. So now we've completed this thought experiment, we have to go back and see, can Hitler be inherently evil? Because if he's not inherently evil, then what is he? Is he inherently good? Well, no, because back in our actual history, he did some of the most atrocious things. So what is he? Is Adolf Hitler good or bad? And with this experiment, we discover the problem. He's neither. These labels, good and bad, are illusory. Hitler did what he did because of many factors: bad timing, bad luck, wrong place, wrong time, but most of all, ideology. And it's very easy for people in civilization to be captured by ideology and captivated by it because we're externally referenced. That is, we are all pulled away from our inner sense of knowing by conformity to the mechanical clock over the natural rhythm of our bodies, for example, or from the sense of well-being we should get from early physical contact, but which we have to try and replace with various addictions throughout our life, or from our innate sense of empathy, which is not allowed to develop and flourish on our own, so it has to be replaced with externally imposed commandments. All this means that we're torn apart from the trust in ourselves, and instead lost in a sea of terrible external substitutes. Externally referenced individuals. Think about that phrase, externally referenced individuals. Yeah, we're individual. We're externally referenced. What does that mean? Externally referenced. Lost. Individuals. Alone. Compare this to our situation if we only had our continuum left intact. Internally referenced communities. In the former, we don't know who we are and we don't know where we are. And in the latter, we both know who we are and where we are. Much is made of individualization in our culture and personalization. I think the zenith of this is the Coke adverts, share a Coke with insert name here, which is the ultimate commercialization of this idea of individuality. The irony being that you have a Coke bottle with your name printed on it. It's supposed to be individual, yet it's the most unindividual thing. It's mass-produced. It's almost saying, like, human beings, hello, you're mass-produced. Everybody's individual, just like everybody else. The physicist Steven Weinberg once said that good people do good things and evil people do evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion. See, I think this is nonsense. There are no good people. There are no bad people. The only deciding factor is context, and in the case of humans, ideology. The fact of the matter is that Hitler's ideologies could, and in fact only did, spring from the foundational ideology that we share in Western civilization, that we are all egos in bags of skin, separate from the world, apart from the world, but not a part of the world. Such a false belief, doctrine, and ideology has been shaping our part of this species for thousands of years, and we're reaching crisis point, as the veil is beginning to slip in the face of the facts of reality. However, let's look at this the other way, because we could do the same thought experiment with someone else. What about Beethoven? Beethoven is one of my favourite composers. He revolutionised music. He made, well, beyond that, he made stuff that can connect you to a transcendental place, whether that's on some kind of other world, spiritual plane, or whether it's just a change in the chemistry of your body. Either way, he does connect you to some kind of realness within yourself, this kind of wordless, timeless, placeless connection. But let's take Beethoven and put him in the Iguana tribe as a baby. Beethoven was abused as a child. He was forced to practice scales and wake up in the middle of the night by his drunken father, who would stand over him at the piano with a cane, force him to practice his scales because he wanted him to be the next Mozart, or the next Hitler, the next Mozart, the next child prodigy. So the question is, could Beethoven have been Beethoven without the context of his suffering? Well, the answer is no. And herein lies the dilemma, because without civilization, we wouldn't have Beethovens. But on the other hand, without civilization, we wouldn't have the need for Beethovens. We wouldn't have the need to be delivered somewhere else, to something else. We wouldn't have the need for this transcendental deliverance from the reality that we find ourselves in. The Buddha said existence is suffering. But I think our existence is suffering. And by that I mean everything post-agriculturally. Ever since we've started this belief system that man is separate from nature, that there is a human world and an other world, basically division, and the ultimate division, which is the division of us from ourselves, which is sort of the ultimate madness, if you like. In the next video, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at spirituality, so-called spirituality, which I see in evolutionary terms. Anyway, I'm PJ. go and do life.